Hello, thank you for being in a new video. This time we have an unboxing of the iPhone 15 Plus. Let's get started. This is possibly one of the most controversial devices because it could compete directly against the iPhone 14 Pro, although Apple has now removed that model from its lineup. So it is no longer in Apple's current lineup, but you could still find it at some retailers. Anyway, let's find out what Apple can offer us with this model, which in Mexico is priced from 21,999 pesos MXN. The reference price in dollars appears on the screen. But remember that the prices here are not the same as those there. You already know that it comes available in a very good amount of colors, and in this case, it starts from 128 gigabytes, and its highest model has 512. Say no more, and let's open this box. And here I already have this device with me, and right away you notice one of the main differences, but so that you can notice it more, we're going to invite the past generation to come on stage here. So we have iPhone 14 Plus and here iPhone 15 Plus. You already noticed one of the main differences talking about the design. We now find a matte glass that's very pleasing to the eye and also to the touch. It feels smooth, it doesn't feel as sticky as you might get to feel the glass of the last generation, which was much more reflective. So there we see one of the main differences. Also, the Apple matches the same color of the device. However, unlike the Pro models, in this case it still retains the traditional switch that Apple has had for a very long time on the iPhone. So the action button is reserved for these models. In addition, in this case we still retain this aluminum frame. It would have been interesting that now in these models they put stainless steel as we saw in the Pro models of past generations. The truth is that they will be very similar physically, but in a moment I will tell you some other differences that we found from the last generation to this new one, because obviously there will be changes. In fact, I don't know if you will notice the difference, but apparently the photo module is a little bigger. I'm gonna try to put the case from the last model to see if it fits. And look, oddly enough, it looks like it does fit, but I feel like it went in too easily. Whereas on the last model, I had to exert a little more pressure when putting that holster on. So I'm not so sure, but it looks like it does fit the exact same holsters. Let me turn this device on, and while it's powering up, let's see what else comes in the box. For starters, we have this new USB-C to USB-C cable that is a braided type, a very good quality cable. Compared to past generations, I would think it's going to break a lot less. So I like this change, and of course the transition to the new USB-C port will mean that with the same cable you can charge virtually all Apple products now. And finally we're going to find little pieces of paper. We have the tool to remove the tray and the sticker that could not miss. And that's all there is in the box. The 20-watt charger you have to buy separately, although remember that it is also compatible with the power delivery standard. So if you buy any other charger that has this standard, it's also going to recognize its maximum charging power. Let me set up the device and we'll be back to get to know it in more detail. So the device is already here configured, so let's continue the tour of its specifications so you can get to know it in a more detailed level of detail. We found 201 grams of weight, 7.8 millimeters thick. The screen continues to be 6.7 inches in its diagonal OLED. Apple calls it Super Retina XDR. Although in this case it doesn't have ProMotion, that is, it doesn't have 120 Hz. That's definitely something that for this price we can demand from it. You don't feel smooth movements. Of course, the animations on iOS are very nice, but if you compare it to how the movements look on Android devices at this same price, it will definitely fall below. Apple still does not offer 120 Hz in this price range, reserving it only for the Pro models, and that will clearly be a weak point, although we are not yet in the review, but I think this is most obvious. Of course, the screen will have a lot of quality in display, in level of detail, but the refresh rate falls short. In specifications, we could say that it is a very similar screen to the last generation. However, One of the main differences, as you can clearly see, is the dynamic island, which is a very good trick through software that Apple implemented, slightly changing the cutout, which practically still occupies the same space. But now through software, they try to take better advantage of this cutout to hide some things or show a little more information out there, which in past models was not available. So, a good move in software that will give a plus to this new generation. Although I think they could perfectly put it on the notch, but obviously it will be a feature reserved only for the latest devices. It maintains IP68 certification, so it can withstand up to 30 minutes at a depth of 6 meters, at least that is the certification it gets, so it has very high chances of surviving if you happen to fall into the water. In the cameras there will also be an important difference, even though it looks very similar. We have 48 megapixels in the new model, and that's not only going to allow you to take higher resolution pictures, which is already a very good thing, but it's a feature that maybe only people who want to print high resolution pictures would take advantage of. However, it also benefits from the zoom, which we'll talk about in a moment. So, the main camera is 48 megapixels with f1.6 aperture. In addition to that, we have the 12 megapixel ultra-wide angle camera with f2.4 aperture. It gives us 120 degrees of view, so we have two very good cameras, although the ultra-wide camera doesn't have autofocus, unlike the Pro models. So you can't take advantage of it for macro photography from very close up, for noticing textures and the like. So even though they are good cameras, it's not such a versatile system. And thanks to the addition of the new 48 megapixel camera, Apple has decided to promote a third camera, which we could describe as a kind of virtual camera, because it will actually take advantage of the same sensor, only cropping it, so Apple ensures that it maintains an optical quality. We would be talking about a 12 megapixel 2x telephoto with exactly the same aperture of the main lens. So let's see the results of first impressions, for me to tell you how it is. Let's see. For starters, the selfies. The preview looks pretty optimized, so you can anticipate that the result of the picture is going to be good, and in fact, as you take it, it still gets better. Remember that this is a very high dynamic range compatible display, so it can brighten these areas more intensely to give the photo display more realism. So, at first impression, I love the camera, reminding you that it also has autofocus, as it did in the last generation. So, we have a very good level of detail, even if you are far away or close to the camera. And for recording videos, it is very useful, but I will tell you all that in more detail in the review. For now, let me show you some pictures. This is 1x, then we will have 2x, which is supposed to maintain optical quality, and honestly, it does look good. It seems to have a good level of detail. The maximum, now it is 10x, remember that before it was 5x. So, it was a totally necessary change, but in fact it still falls short against other competitors in the price range talking about zoom. However, speaking exclusively about the Apple ecosystem, the improvement is very significant. Notice, here we have the same pictures in 1x, now they are in 2x, where here we are supposed to already maintain optical quality, and here we have digital quality. But let's try to zoom in to see if you really notice that difference. And I must say that in 2x's, the truth is that you don't really notice that much difference unless you get really close to see the details, and then you could determine that we do have more detail in the new model. But honestly, for the average user, there's not going to be much difference. The biggest difference I find will be when you keep zooming in, because here we have, for example, 5x's, where it still looks very similar, but when you get closer, you can see much more sharpness and definition in the new model. And above all, consider that this new model, as I already anticipated, lets you go up to 10x, and this is the maximum range that we had in the last model. So we have a pretty significant improvement in zoom, talking about the iPhone models. However, I insist that for this price range, the zoom still falls short compared to what competing Android devices offer. But I'll give you more details in the review. Remember that another change will be the USB-C connector, which was previously Lightning, so now it allows you more versatility, although in this, which is not the Pro model, we still do not have high-speed transfers because it is a single connector. In fact, again, in this same price range, in Android devices, you will find high-speed USB-C connectors. And well, about the battery, I will tell you details in the review because Apple does not officially share what the capacity is. But what I can tell you is that it supports 20 watts wired charging, 15 watts wireless via MagSafe. It doesn't yet support reversible wireless charging, so it still feels like it could evolve a lot over time. It should be remembered that Apple is slowly introducing improvements. Finally, another important improvement will be the evolution of the processor. In the last model we had Apple A15 Bionic, now we have Apple A16 Bionic, which is obviously not the latest processor, but the one that last generation Pro models had. So, we're going to run this benchmark simply to try to appreciate the evolution that it's had from one generation to the next, and you can decide if the upgrade is worth it for you. And here are the results. As you can see, from this device we have a lot of power, but here it's increased significantly as well. So, in terms of power, both are very good, but there is an important improvement from the last generation to this new one. Remember that I will be telling you more details in the review. For now, we have reached the end of this video. If you liked it, you know you can tell us. And we'll see you next time.